What were you the most interested? What have you been the most interested in? Kind of your top 2 or 3 observational checklist items when it comes to checking out the Cowboys in the offseason?
You know, the first thing in watching OTAs and minicamp, actually the very first thing is to remember that you're not going to really learn very much.
Right.
Because it's really for the coaches. It's all about the installation of certain schemes and offense and defense. You won't really find out anything till they put pads on in camp. But you always want to see what the new players look like. Do they show you anything? I think one thing that's beneficial this year, frankly, is that we are so far back to a pre-COVID kind of operation.
Yeah.
We can be in the locker room and talk to players after practice, and you can find things out in a non-interview situation. So what that has led to is me being a little more excited than I was before about Tyler Smith, because the people who Dak Prescott's eyes just lit up 2 or 3 weeks ago talking about him, and Zach Martin is very impressed with him, and Will McClay thinks he's got some Eric Williams tendencies. And so those are all good things. Doesn't mean he's going to be that right away, and there's going to be some growth, but I think that he's got a chance to be something. So, you know, you want to see the guys that you think are going to get a chance to play. And so Tolbert hasn't done very much until yesterday because he had a little hamstring issue, but they're babying that. He looks like he's got a chance to be something. In fact, I was talking to Babe yesterday. Babe Laufenberg was sitting out there. We were practicing our regular season work. And, I was trying to think back to what the receiving core was in 2018 at the beginning of the season before they spent all the draft capital to get Amari Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
And it was way worse than this because it was Alan Hearns. It was Tavon Austin, who never panned out. It was rookie Michael Gallup, who is not anything like the Michael Gallup they'll have when he comes back from injury. And we still haven't seen Washington, who is a really serviceable player, I think. But Tolbert looks like he's going to have a chance to make a big contribution. You can't tell much about the linemen, but the big tackle, especially from North Dakota, he is an intriguing player. I'm very interested in seeing him in pads, and I think he won't be this year what he's going to be, but he might be something. He's really long for a tackle, and but he seems to have some quickness and some punch. And I'm really interested in the development of the tight end from Wisconsin. I think he had, don't misrepresent this or overstate it, but I think he has a lot of the elements of what Jason Witten had in his game. I'm not saying he's Witten, but when we first saw Witten, we didn't know he was Witten. So I think I'm interested to see him block. He does a lot of things that I think are very useful, and the same thing with the defensive tackle from Arkansas, who might bring them a little edge and some quickness and nastiness in the middle of the defensive line. And then some of the other ones you're going to have to wait and see when they get in drills. But there's some of these rookie free agents. Bell, the safety, is one, and whoever number 40 is, I haven't learned all of that yet, but that's what this time of year is for. Bell's 41, and the receiver from Western Illinois, number 3, Houston. I would keep an eye on him. Those are the things that you go with an open mind when OTAs start. Keep in mind, we are allowed to watch 1 out of every 3 days of 3 of the 4 weeks of OTAs. But those are the things you go to look and try to find out about, and then you have a little better understanding about what to watch for when training camp starts.
You mentioned the tight end. Is he the type of guy that could make them, hold off on giving an extension to Schultz? That's maybe not right now, but as the season goes on, if Dalton doesn't have a contract.
I asked that because I was trying to ask some questions yesterday exactly along that line, wondering if they would maybe think, let's see, okay, we see what we have, let's see how he develops. Now, the problem is you've got 1 month now exactly, as you guys know, to sign Schultz to a long-term deal, or you're going to go into the season without being able to do that, and then you've made a statement, whether you want to or not, to the player, that we're not going to give you that long-term deal right now. And so the one answer that I got back that really kind of resonated with me was it's way too early to tell, and you may not have that answer at the end of the year. It may just not be enough time. So I think in Schultz's case, they have to decide whether they can pay what the market now is for these last 2 or 3 guys who have signed tight end contracts. I think that Schultz does an awful lot of things for them, and I personally hope they find a way to make a deal with him. I think he would like to block better than he did last year, but he's got so much upside that I hope that they do that. But if they don't, I don't think that Ferguson will be the reason they don't. It's too early to say whether, if they were to lose Schultz after the year, whether what they have is going to be the answer or they're going to have to supplement it again. But I think that Ferguson's got some of what you're looking for to add to the mix.
Brad Sham, voice of the boys, here on Shan and RJ via the Diamond Factory hotline. The 2 big offensive storylines this week: Tony Pollard moving around, leaner Dak Prescott being unleashed to use his legs more versus last year. How do you feel about those 2 issues, Brad? Really, Pollard's usage versus Zeke, who is now much maligned in the Metroplex, and then Dak using his legs more than last year.
So the Pollard story, last year, they were talking about doing that last year. And I remember conversation at news conferences in training camp, and even in training camp last year, because of protocols, we still didn't get the opportunity to get even coaches off to the side. But the talk was, and McCarthy kind of led us in this direction, and certainly didn't disabuse us of the notion that with the versatility of both Pollard and Jarwin, to be able to, now this is last year, to be able to function from wide receiver routes as well as what they do, that you had the chance to have a much more multiple offense than it looked like. And you could have Pollard line up at running back and not be a running back on that play, because what is he's going to run a wide receiver route. So what they've shown so far is a little bit more of him actually lining up at wide receiver, but they're just looking at that right now. They've talked about it before. They talked about it last year. Frankly, Sean, last year, after listening to them in training camp, I expected to see something along the lines of, if you remember how the Steelers used Le'Veon Bell in his best years with them, before he left them, he'd lined up in the slot and he lined up wide, not just as a running back. And I kind of thought that we were going to see that with Pollard last year, and we never did. And so, I think that that's a thing that could happen. I think that they have to find ways early before they have Gallup. And I don't know how long he's going to miss in the regular season. He looks really good working off on the side, and I saw him at a golf tournament a month or so ago, and he's in a great frame of mind. But until they have Gallup at full strength, you're going to have to find other ways, because now you've taken out Cooper and Wilson and Gallup. And until he's back, you've got to find ways to create offense, and that's where using Pollard as a wide receiver can be a big help, and also Schultz's ability to get up the field can be used creatively. So when you talk about the Pollard thing, I just smile, because I think we've heard it before, and let's see what they do with it. Dak, he looks phenomenal. And I really think that his lack of running was partly last year self-imposed, partly the coaching staff saying, look, he's got an uncertain leg still until we see it. And so that was a weapon that they'd had before. I don't think he's not going to be Lamar Jackson. But yeah. I think that he'll run more. But the notion, here's what makes me laugh. The notion that Mike McCarthy is going to stand up at a news conference in June and tell the world how Dak Prescott is going to be used in the offense.
Yeah.
It's just laughable. It's a reasonable question, but the answer you get in June is just the answer you get in June, and there's nothing else to talk about. So it's really kind of meaningless. But I think when the games start, I think once we get to September and starts for real, I think that you'll see him be more involved using his legs, and that'll a lot of it be up to him. So much of this is up to him. I'll tell you another thing that I got a chuckle out of 2 weeks ago at OTAs, and this is, again, the opportunity to talk to guys in the locker room. There was all the talk about how they've got to use both Lamb and Pollard more than they did last year. They got to get the ball to them. And when there weren't a lot of people around, I said to him, when Witten was a rookie, Parcells used to say, we've got to find a way to get the ball to Witten. And I said, I would say to Babe on the air, hey, Babe, how can they get the ball to Witten? And Babe would say, throw it. That would be the best way to do it. So Dak laughed, and he said, yeah. And he said, and that's what we've got to do with Lamb. And I said, well, you've got the ball. I mean, aren't you going to decide how much? And the look on his face and the look in his eye indicated to me that he's way ahead of everybody on that and how much. Now, you didn't ask me about Lamb, but I think this is a thing that we're going to get a look at once the season gets going. It seems to me that Dak sees everything in Lamb that you want to see from a number one receiver, and that Dak, as the quarterback, gaining in confidence every year, is going to take it upon himself to make sure that Lamb is treated as the number one receiver in terms of the distribution of the ball. Whether that plays out or not, that's part of the reason you watch, but that's one of the things I think is in Prescott's mind. I mean, it's up to him. If he wants to throw the ball to Lamb, he'll throw the ball to Lamb.